The weather is about to change, in a big way. But first, a major Arctic blast is pushing across the country this morning, bringing widespread extreme cold and shattering temperature records for millions of people, especially across the southeastern United States. This has led to falling iguanas across Florida, in addition to crazy snow in the Carolinas. But the weather pattern change that is coming this week will surprise you. The jet stream is about to take a major turn, which will alter who exactly sees big snow to start February, and who sees the most intense cold air over the next 7 days. But that's not all, because the polar vortex is gearing up again to unleash an even larger shot of cold air in February, as a significant disruption of the polar vortex is likely during the first half of February, as a result of a sudden stratospheric warming event with a possible split of the vortex into 2 distinct circulation centers. So in today's forecast, I'm going to break down exactly what you need to know about this major weather pattern change that'll impact the entire country. And in just a moment, we'll talk more about the big weather pattern change that is coming to the United States. But I do want to talk about yesterday's winter storm. It overperformed significantly across North Carolina. Areas near Asheboro, Greensboro, back towards Charlotte, saw a widespread 12 to 18 inches of snowfall. Back over in Raleigh, these areas were not as fortunate. We had a large dry slot, and that led to basically only about 1, 2, maybe 3 inches of snow for most of you. Some isolated locations picked up closer to 5 to 6 inches. And back over near Cape Hatteras, many areas pushed over a foot of snowfall from this winter storm. So, big numbers across North Carolina. Other areas like South Carolina and Georgia also had some decent numbers, especially near Columbia and Myrtle Beach. I do think one takeaway from this winter storm in the Carolinas is that people will basically use anything to get snow out of areas like their patio and their driveway. Using a leaf blower is definitely a new one. Now, over the next few days, we are going to see a major weather pattern change that is going to affect nearly all of the United States. So, let's talk more about it. This right here is our jet stream, which are the upper-level winds. And right now, we have a very large dip in our jet stream all across the eastern tier of the United States. And this dip in the jet stream is allowing for Arctic air to make its way all the way down into Florida this morning, where we have dozens of temperature records being broken. Falling iguanas all across the state as well. It is an emergency out there for falling iguanas. Temperatures are basically below 30 in almost all of Florida this morning. It is pretty crazy stuff. But as we go into late tomorrow and as well as Tuesday, our weather pattern is going to really start to change. Because our jet stream is going to go from that very large dip to more of a northwesterly to southeasterly flow that is going to stretch from Washington back into the southeast. And so what this basically means is that our weather should be a lot quieter for the next few days, as we do not have any sort of organized low-pressure system that will be developing. However, by Wednesday and Thursday is when our next shot of Arctic air and as well as snow will exist. It'll be mainly impacting areas back over here in the Ohio Valley, back in the mid-Atlantic, and an Arctic blast will make its way down into the southern plains and all along the east coast, where temperatures are going to drop significantly again. And then by the end of the week is when our weather pattern is going to favor a lot of snow, especially from the northern plains back over into the northeast. So, we are returning to the weather pattern that we basically saw back over in December, where we saw some favorable setups for some snowfall in the Midwest and also the Northeast, and even across the Great Lakes. That is because a ridge is going to be building back over in the Rockies and along the West Coast. That'll keep areas in the West Coast a lot warmer and drier. Unfortunately, though, the people in the East Coast are going to be suffering consequences, as we will be dealing with below-average temperatures. Yet again, another significant Arctic blast by this upcoming weekend. And then on top of that, we'll be dealing with more snowfall. And I know all of you are sick and tired of me saying Arctic blast, but I hate to say it. We're going to be seeing it even more this week. So after this Arctic blast makes its way out of the United States tonight and tomorrow, the cold air will linger all up and down the East Coast, at least through Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, another cold front is going to make its way across Texas, back into the Northeast, where temperatures will fall once again by as much as 20 to 30 degrees. So more cold air is on the way. And then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is when we're going to get a really strong low-pressure system developing over the Northeast. This could bring some snowfall to areas in New England, the Great Lakes, and the Midwest. And on top of that, another significant shot of Arctic air is going to build. So if you're in the Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, anywhere in the Ohio Valley, it is going to be bone-chilling cold for all of those areas this upcoming weekend. And then by next week, that cold air could just linger across the Northeast. It could be a brutal stretch of weather for those over in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast over the next 7 to 10 days. And just for reference, this is the departure from average for our temperatures for today. Most of the East Coast dealing with temperatures as much as 20 to 30 degrees below average. By the middle of the week, another shot of Arctic air will stretch from Texas back into the Northeast. Not nearly as significant, but our next Arctic blast will be a lot more significant by next weekend. Now, over the next few days, we are going to continue to see very cold air. Right now, it is extremely cold, even as far south as Florida, where areas even near Miami are near freezing temperatures. All across Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, we are talking about sub-zero temperatures this morning. It is just brutal out there. Tomorrow's not going to be much better. Across the southeast, temperatures will remain below freezing. The northeast will also be very cold. But things will begin to improve as we go into Tuesday, as temperatures will be back into the 50s and 60s all along the Gulf Coast. Snow will begin to melt back over in the Carolinas and Virginia. And then the Northeast and the Midwest will continue to remain very cold, as another Arctic blast is expected around Wednesday. That one will be mainly impacting the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. But the more significant one comes this weekend, as areas all across the Northeast could easily be sub-zero for temperatures going into Sunday morning. So very cold air is on the horizon. Now, over the next 7 days, our weather will be very interesting across the United States. It will not be nearly as active as what we've dealt with over the last 2 weeks, with the 2 different large winter storms, but instead we'll have a lot of different shots of snowfall. And it all begins tomorrow. We are expecting some light to moderate snow across the northern plains and the Midwest underneath another high-pressure system. And right underneath that high will be some more cold air that is going to move into the Midwest on Tuesday. By late Tuesday and early Wednesday, a very weak low-pressure system will form in the Ohio Valley. This will bring some pretty minor snowfall to Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Maybe a couple of inches of snow for some of you. We might have a few locations near 3 to 4 inches, but generally speaking, Tuesday, not looking at a major shot of snowfall, but additional snow in what we've already seen so far this winter. And then as we go into Tuesday night and early Wednesday morning, some snow is possible in Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. Those areas basically got robbed from this last winter storm that just happened. That really didn't bring any snowfall to those areas. By late Wednesday and early Thursday, we may have a lingering area of moisture in the Carolinas that could bring additional snowfall to Virginia and the Appalachian Mountains, and maybe parts of North Carolina. But this is not going to be a major winter storm. We're just talking about some light snow that might add up to an inch in some isolated locations. And then Thursday should be the quietest day of the week, as we're not really expecting any sort of major weather events to be happening. But this is an important day to be watching, because we'll have 2 different Alberta clippers coming out of Canada. Our jet stream again is going to be angled out of the west and northwest, which will help to allow for some snow systems to move across parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast Thursday and Friday. And this is really going to be our next big shot of snowfall. And this is in a completely different area that really hasn't seen snow recently. and that's going to be back over in the Midwest. So Friday morning, we could have some heavy snowfall in Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and another snow system moving over into the Northeast. And depending on how these two Alberta clippers mix together, we could end up seeing a widespread snow event across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and the Northeast on Friday and early Saturday. This could go as far south as North Carolina and Virginia, and then on Saturday, that snow should linger around New England, and that could actually form a pretty intense storm system just to the east of New England on Saturday and Sunday. We'll have to see the evolution of that storm system. If that were to happen, it would be very windy on Saturday and Sunday across the Northeast, which means it'll be even colder in those areas. And then beyond that, things become more uncertain. But right around the middle of February is where I think we're going to get a lot more storm systems with a lot more snowfall. And February is notorious for having the polar vortex unleash very cold air in the United States. And over the next week or so, we are likely going to see a stratospheric warming event occur back over in the Arctic. And that could allow for this Arctic air mass to pinch and go down to the south into the United States. If that were to happen, we could have a pretty big Arctic blast sometime around the middle of February. So, this is definitely something that we'll be keeping a close eye on for here over the next several days. Models are hinting at some very cold air around the middle of the month, and this would be exactly why. So definitely make sure that you're still ready. Winter is nowhere near done. February is one of the more active months when it comes to both snow, ice, and as well as Arctic air. So things will continue to remain very interesting. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below, and we will have another video probably tomorrow, but if not on Tuesday. So, we'll see you in the next one.